This is Cromar with TGN, welcoming you to another World of Warcraft Cataclysm beta video. This is part 20 of the 22-part series, DPS Rundown, and today we're covering the Shadow Priest. So, let's take a look at the first most important thing is Shadow Orbs. These have changed a lot since my original class change video. The first thing that you've noticed is that Shadow Orbs no longer increase the periodic spell damage of your Shadow spells. Instead, the way it works is when you cast your Mind Blast to consume your Shadow Orbs, it does buff the Mind Blast still, but after casting it and consuming the Shadow Orb buff, you gain another buff called Empowered Shadow, and that increases your periodic damage instead. If you're confused, I'll show you what I mean. Before, when you gained the Shadow Orbs, if I ever get one, yes, they're still annoying. Okay, there we go. Before you consumed it or before while it was up, it buffed your shadow damage and then you consumed it. But now it doesn't do that anymore. So let me just hit my Mind Blast, consume it, and then you gain Empowered Shadow, 14%. And the reason 14 is because it's based on your mastery. It's increased by mastery. So you might think that since it stacks up, stacking up more Shadow Orbs will give you more damage, right? Well, it does give you more damage to your Mind Blast. There we go. Well, that was fast. That's a lot faster than usual. So let's do a Mind Blast. However, it does not buff your Empowered Shadow. It still only does the 14%. So your rotation actually will be to use your Mind Blast immediately as soon as it's up, as long as you have a Shadow Orb up. And, statistically, you should generally have a Shadow Orb up before your Mind Blast is available. However, in the event that you don't, you'll just need to keep spamming Mind Flay until you do get one, which shouldn't be but more than one or two casts, unless you're really unlucky. The other major change that's happened to your abilities since my original video was Mind Spike. It no longer is part of your rotation at all. Before it was like a high mana cost, high DPS spell, but now, if you look at that tooltip here, oh, shut up, Mind Flay. There we go. Now if you look at the tooltip, it actually consumes your debuffs. You saw it just consume my Shadow Orb Pain. So you can't use it as part of your rotation since your dots are like all of your DPS, and using Mind Spike will destroy all your dots, which is, I mean, it's definitely different. I don't know of any other class that can sabotage themselves like that. But so talent choices are really simple. I got everything except for the talents that you don't need at all, which are your Phantasm, your Psychic Scream, your Silence, Psychic Horror, and Paralysis. Everything else is all damage related. And then in Discipline, you get your 9 that are more or less set, and you have 1 talent left over to put in whatever you want. Now, if you are absolutely must have Silence, you can get it by dumping Veiled Shadows and taking your extra point to get Psychic Scream and Silence, but because Veiled Shadows is only moderately useful, since you shouldn't need your Shadow Fiend up that fast, but I mean, it still helps. It's just that if you really want Silence, you can get it. It's possible to get it by dumping Veiled Shadows. Also, if your mana, in the future with high-end gear, your mana might get good enough that you can dump other mana talents, like you can take 1 point out of Mel Agility, or you can take out Masochism. But Masochism is actually really good, so I wouldn't take it out unless you're like completely mana's a non-issue for you. So anyway, moving on to glyphs. These are very simple. Of course, I got the Shackle and Dead glyphs, so I'd always take those, and the Fear glyph. The rest are crap, but I would not go into a raid without Shackle or Fear. Anyway, Prime glyphs. We have Mind Flay and Shadow Orb Pain are obvious, and then Shadow Orb Death is your double execute. It allows you to just cast Shadow Orb Death twice in a row, not over and over again because it has a cooldown on the glyph, but twice in a row. And that's something that most classes are getting. Glyph of Killshot, for example, does that. As an alternate, Shadow Orb Death, there's another really good one, Glyph of Dispersion. This is a pretty huge drop on the cooldown. It's, 2 minutes natively, right? Yeah, 2 minutes to a minute 15. And that's actually pretty good since Dispersion doubles as both an Evocation and an Ice Block, but slightly weaker version of each. Now, you shouldn't need the mana from Dispersion, but if you do, then it's a good crutch. It'll help you out. It just lowers your DPS when you use it, of course. But the real good thing about this glyph is for certain boss mechanics that really are really dangerous, or that your healers really hate, then this will actually help a lot with that. So let's check out that rotation. I mentioned the thing about the Mind Flay and Mind Blast before, but let's see it in action with your dots and everything. Now, of course, you want to keep moving after you cast your dots, as you can see, because it gives you the extra bonus to your Shadowy Apparition proc, and I don't know why it's going so slowly. Come on. Come on. There we go. Finally. God. Anyway, let me try this again. So I do have a couple stacks of Shadow Orbs, so I'm gonna hit my Mind Blast, and then go back to charging this, and Archangel. I stacked up too many. Hold on a second. Let me refresh my dots. Sorry. And then your other cooldowns to manage, of course, will be you want to use your Shadow Door Death every time the cooldown's up. For mana, if you get enough, if your mana gets good enough to gear that you don't need to use Shadow Door Death anymore, then that would actually be pretty helpful, since Shadow Door Death does lower your DPS a little bit by using it, since it is pretty weak above execute range. But other than that, I just wanted to wait for my stuff to wear off so I can start my rotation over. Other than that, it's pretty good, and at this level of gear, I definitely need it. That's for sure. Now, in addition to these abilities, your other cooldowns are your Shadow Fiend and Dispersion for mana. Shadow Fiend you'll probably need to use often, but hopefully your Dispersion you won't need at all. It's there for desperation, so you don't just stand around doing nothing. Okay. This is a little sloppy, but it'll look a lot better in the real test, I assure you. Anyway, so let me wait for my stuff to drop off and my cooldowns to run out. And we shall do the real test. Alright, that's it. It stopped at 7100 and before ticking down, so 7100 is our number. Almost all the damage came from dots, only a small amount from Mind Blast, Instant Devouring Plague, Shadow Word Death. Again, Shadow Word Death is mainly used for the mana regen, not for the damage itself. So if you wanted to eke out just a little more DPS, you could probably take that out and replace it with Mind Flays. By the way, aren't these graphics annoying, all the stupid red glowy crap? They should really tone that down. And the fact that your dots are your pretty much your entire DPS is why it's so important to prevent that empowered healing or powered shadow rather from dropping off. It's very important. So yeah, that's the Shadow Priest. It's actually kind of fun. I actually kind of enjoyed it, and I liked it a lot more than before they made the change to Shadow Orbs, because it was kind of weird before, but now it just totally makes sense. You just maintain your buff by doing constant DPS. You rely on dots. You do have lots of room for motion while you're moving. There's lots of stuff you can do, including not just refreshing dots either, but and your Shadow Word Pain gains the big bonus from Shadowy Apparition while you're moving. So it's pretty good. It's pretty flexible spec, and I enjoyed it. And of course, it provides lots of buffs for the raid. Also, Vampiric Embrace really helps your healers, and not only healing the group but healing yourself. Much like an Affliction Warlock, it actually is a pretty good utility for a raid where healing is difficult, which is most of them, to be honest. Alright, that's it for the Shadow Priest for today. Thanks for watching. This is Cromar with TGN, as always, asking you to please rate, please comment, and please subscribe.